So, are you like me and you have more scraps in your stash than you can use in a lifetime? Well, this little project will use up some of your scraps and you'll end up with this really cute little zipper pouch in the end. So, let's get started. I just can't throw away anything, and so today's project is something that's going to help me use up some of these scraps. So the first thing I'm going to do is take them over and press them so that I can cut them up. Okay, so you just start cutting them all down to 1.5 inches, and you really do need to have a rotary cutter to do this much of this cutting. So here's a really fun little piece that's going to go in, and it doesn't have to be big pieces. You can work up your small pieces. So then you have to decide, is that worth saving? I don't know. Now you can color coordinate your stash a little bit if that's what you would like to do, or you could just use your stash really randomly. And if you're like me, each fabric that's in your stash, you used that for something. And sometimes there's just really great memories associated with the little tiniest scraps that are in your stash because you made a baby quilt or you made something for someone else. And so even though it might not go with absolutely everything else, it means something to you. That's okay. We just need to keep working this, and you just cut and cut and cut until you've worked your way through your stash pile. And you need to have the ends of them square too, because we are going to be sewing these all together. I even cut up, I had some quilt blocks that didn't make the cut and I fussy cutted these little kitty cats so they will just show up in my strip, which is going to be really fun. Just place them together, right sides together, and I just do a straight seam across. You could do a diagonal if you wanted, like that, and then you just pick up this one and stick whatever's next in the stash to the end and sew it. So we're chain piecing these together, which means I don't stop sewing. I just do a couple of blank little stitches in between, like so. And I do back tack. I have sewn them end to end in one long chain piece. So you just go in and you clip them apart where you had that little space between each one. And these don't have to be very big scraps like you saw. I mean, you could cut up anything that's over 1.5 inches wide and just more than 3 or 4 inches long, and you can use it for this. So there's that. So now we have this all done. And if you're new to sewing, like I said, this gives you a great opportunity to practice sewing straight lines. And you can choose to do a 1/4 inch seam or a 3/8 inch seam or whatever you're wanting to practice. If you're a quilter, practicing your 1/4 inch seam is really great. All right, so now I'm going to put my right sides together like this, and now I'm going to take this to my machine and sew down the entire length of this big long ribbon. Just folded these intersections over. I didn't try to open them or anything like that. This is just not that fancy. We're just trying to make a nice piece of cloth out of all of our scraps. So I made it to the end, and it actually ended up really close to where 2 pieces were sewed together. Sometimes it's a loop, but anyway, I'm just going to cut that off. All right. So now I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to go over and press this seam going one way, and I'll be right back. So here we are with our 2 strips sewn together, And you guessed it, we're going to put right sides together, and we're going to sew down, attaching these 2 strips together, which will make 4 strips together. So see you at the end. So we made it to the end, and there's this little loop. Gonna cut it off. Here's our 4 pieces sewed together. Gonna go press it and then put them end to end and sew it one more time. Here is our little piece of fabric that we made from all of our scraps, and you can see it is just adorable. What we're going to do now is we're going to quilt this to give it just a little more body. And so to do that, I have just a piece of fabric in the back, a piece of cotton batting here, and then our little quilt piece. When I do my quilting, I like to just use a little bit of 505 to spray it down. So I'm going to spray down my piece of fabric we just made to the batting. This is just a temporary fixative. You could, instead of doing this, pin it all over before you do it, but you do have to kind of hook it together somehow. So there's that. Now I'll spray the batting down to the backing, and we're ready to get started. So here it is, all quilted together, and I used free motion quilting, and I didn't show it because this video is really not about learning how to quilt. But if you are not comfortable with free motion quilting, once you get your quilt sandwich put together, just do straight line stitching on all of your lines. That would be great. You just need to attach it together because we want to have some body in our little bag that we're going to make. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my straight edge, and I'm going to cut this up and straighten it all up into 2 equal pieces. So I've been squaring it up, and I have it down to where all my edges are square. And the way I'm going to determine how big I want to have this piece of fabric be is I want to measure my zipper. So my zipper is that big, so I'm going to cut this big. There's really no, nuclear science involved. So there's that. Now I have to decide what to do with that. Ooh, coasters. So here's my 2 pieces. Let's make our zipper pouch. I have cut my lining pieces to be exactly the same size as our scrappy pieces that we quilted. And so now we're ready to make it into the zipper pouch. You'll need to have the zipper foot for your sewing machine. You'll take your zipper and you'll put it, this is the lining. I'm going to put the zipper right side up, right along the edge. And I'm pinning so these come out the edge so that I can see them when I'm sewing and I can move them out of the way. Then we take our piece of fabric that we made and put it on top. So where the zipper is, I'm going to open it up about halfway. Then I'm going to take this and line it up right on the edge, making a nice little sandwich, like so. And I'm just going to put a clip on this one. And then just work my way down, making my sandwich. And I have it all the way down to the end, and lining everything up perfectly. Okay, so I have the zipper foot on my machine, and this is what mine looks like. Yours might look just a little bit different. So I need to move my needle over so that it doesn't hit this little bar in the middle. All right, so now I'm going to take this clip off, and I have moved the zipper pull out of the way, remember. Sewing this way will make a 1/4 inch seam down the side of my zipper. So I'm going to do that in backstitch. Pull out my pin. And I'm feeling where I have my zipper at. It's way, way down here, so I'm still good. So I'm going to pull this clip off and sew. pull this clip off and this pin out and sew. So now I'm getting close to where my zipper pull is. I made it so my needle stops down. Show it to you right there. I'm going to grab it and zip it to the top. Right past my zipper foot. I have to lift my presser foot up to do it. So now I know my zipper is completely out of the way. Everything else is still lined up, so I'm just going to finish sewing down this side. Pin, pull it out, and backstitch. Okay, so now we're ready to do the other side of our bag. And because of my little kitties, I wanted them at the top. So I'm putting the quilt side down. I've opened my zipper up. I'm going to put it right here across the top. Then I'm going to add my lining across the top and pin it all in place like we did last time. So we have our little sandwich all made. Our zipper is open for the most part, and we just do like we did before. We just sew down this side. Needle down, presser foot up, take the zipper and zip it up. Okay, zipper is up, and then presser foot back down, making sure everything is still lined up, and finish sewing. Back stitch, and we've got our zipper in. And if you wanted to do any embellishing on the front of your little bag, this would be your last opportunity before we close it up. And so all I did, I wanted to play off these two little kitty cats, a wooden bird button and 3 little flower buttons. I wonder-undered a piece of scrap, pink down, and then I had a little scrap piece of felt that I stitched down and then just sewed my buttons on. So that's all that is, and it's entertainment for my kitty cats that are right there. So now we're going to finish the bag, and what we're going to do is we're going to top stitch right along here. I have pressed it out, and I'm going to pin this back. I'm going to move my pins back so they'll be out of the way when I'm sewing, but I know that it will help me hold this lining, because it's the lining that will probably pull up and want to get into the zipper. So anyway, I'm going to pin this down. I'm going to top stitch it from the front side, and I'll be right back. So here it is, top stitched, and I did just like I did when we were putting the zipper in. I started here and I came down, and before I got to here I unzipped it, then did the same thing here, moving this little zipper piece out of the way as I was top stitching so I could keep a nice straight line. All right, now comes the next part. We take and we flip this side to side like this. All right, and we're going to fold our zipper towards the front, okay, because we top stitched, it's just going to want to do that. All right, and we still have our full allowance here. We're not going to hit that little metal part of our zipper, and the same is up here. But before we sew this, we need to open up our bag. If you don't open up your bag, you'll never get it turned right side out, and that's a sad, sad day, because then you have to rip it out and do it again. So just go ahead and pin this all in place all the way around. Remember to leave yourself an opening down here at the bottom. This is a Frixion pen. It's one of those pens that disappears when you iron it, but leave a good like 4 inches at the bottom to turn it. So go ahead and pin it so that it's all ready to go. All right, so I've sewn around and I left my opening. I remembered my bag is unzipped. So now I want to make this bag not flat, but to have a little bit of shape to it. So what I'm going to do is pull this apart, push these seams to one side, one way, one the other, because My machine is a little princess and it doesn't like to sew through heavy things. So by putting one seam one way and one seam the other way, it won't have to go through so much bulk. So then I'm going to measure up. I'm going to line these seams up so that they line up exactly. I'm going to measure up from the point 1 inch. And I'm going to make a mark. And I'm going to go completely across like this. All right. Let me zoom you in. So I have pulled these corners out. I have offset the seams and I made 1 inch mark across. Now I'm going to do this on both sides of the bag and on the lining. And I'm just going to back stitch and sew right across that. I'll be right back. Okay, I've got all 4 corners sewn. Now, if this is too much for your machine, go ahead and just sew it by hand. I mean, it's just a few little stitches. Then you just cut off all those corners. And now we reach in the bottom that we left open and reach down and grab the bottom of your bag and turn it right side out. And it's a lot to get through that opening because of the quilted fabric, but you can do it. And then poke out your corners. And the corners on your bag. There. And with this quilted fabric, it's going to be wonderful because you have so much body to your bag. It's going to actually stand up and be great. So here we have it. Push the lining in, check it out, make sure everything looks fine. And it looks adorable, just adorable. So now we have to deal with this in the bottom of our lining. And so if I were to pull this, you could see where the seam wants to go together. You could stitch that by hand or just sew it with a really small seam on your machine. So it's just super close to the edge. All right, and you poke it in, push it down into the corners, push up the top right here, both sides, and zip it closed. And here is your little pouch. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope that you can use up some of your scraps that you have around in your stash. If you're like me, it's really hard to throw anything away, so using them up in something like this is just really nice. So until next time, this was Cindy from Vintage to New.